Welcome back to Politics HQ and News Central Television. News Just Richard says that the lawyers representing the Labour Party presidential candidate in the 2023 general elections, Mr. Peter Obi, have filed an appeal with the Supreme Court of Nigeria. They're going all the way to the Supreme Court to contest the Court of Appeal, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal that affirmed President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's victory at the polls. We're going to keep watching developments there and bring you up to date with the latest developments. But now it's time to talk about Nigeria's revenue, which appears to be in dire straits. The new FRS boss at the Federal Inland Revenue Services, Dr. Zach Adedeji, has revealed Nigeria is battling a heavy revenue crisis that may affect the country's debt profile negatively. Adedeji was recently appointed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to ramp up Nigeria's revenue and to help the country's soaring debt to GDP ratio. Although the latest revelations are not new, as financial and economic experts have in the past warned that the moves to be made by FRS with eyes on taxation of Nigerians are greatly anticipated. With a current public outrage and rising cost of living, Nigeria's new revenue boss has some work on his hands. Now, joining me tonight on Politics HQ to discuss this is Baba Yusuf, policy strategist and CEO of a global investment and trade company. Joins me live in our Lagos studio. One welcome to you, Mr. Yusuf, and thanks for joining us on Politics HQ tonight.
Thank you for having me, Gbenga. It's good to be here.
Always a pleasure. Now, Mr. Yusuf, Dr. Adedeji, the new FIRS boss, he did point out that Nigeria is grappling with a revenue crisis. Could you elaborate on the root causes of this crisis, the scale, and how do you foresee it affecting the country's economic stability?
Dr. Adedeji was very succinct. First of all, reiterating what almost everybody in Nigeria knows. We are facing the vagaries of having to take out over 90% of our revenues to pay debt, rising debt stock over the past 8 years, culminating into where we are today. And of course, lack of fiscal discipline, because if you look at it, apart from the debt, rising profile of debt is also a function of our inability to manage our resources and also spending. To manage our spendings and manage our budget, which I believe we'll discuss further. So suffice it to say, we all know where we are today. Dr. Adedeji is now the boss, the tax master in Nigeria. We'll see how he's going to be able to rein in, more inflow from the tax. However, I believe that for us to get out of this doldrum is beyond, increasing tax collections.
Baba Yusuf, if a family head is spending 96% of its revenue on service and debt, it will be described as highly irresponsible. Now, the fact that 96% of government revenue went into debt servicing last year is quite a concerning and damning statistic. Can you explain the potential consequences if this trend continues unchecked, and what steps should be taken to rebalance the budget? Is there hope? Are there things we could do to, turn things around?
To be honest, government is almost at a standstill. I believe the government is living what I call a virtual reality. I'm pushing the citizens also to live what I call a virtual reality, because running the government consistently on debt is becoming almost impossible, because if we have only 4% left to run government, and we are not taking some decisive front-facing actions to ensure that we get out of this logjam, then governance will come to a standstill, and your guess is as good as mine what will happen to the entire country. So I think we have said so much about where we are with regards to the situation in terms of revenue. We need to talk about solutions. I look forward to the action plan by the new tax master.
And I'm happy. I'll pick up from where you stopped, because we have a way of just concentrating on the problems. Yeah. And that would lead me to my next question. The new tax master, the new head of the FRS, Dr. Zach Adedeji, has highlighted some of the things he will do during his term to jack up our revenue collection. Let's take a look at this infographic and some of the key points. He said he's going to key into Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee's mandate. He's also said the FIRS will embrace efforts made to design a tidy fiscal landscape, which you did highlight that some of our problems beyond tax collection is in spending, is in that fiscal discipline. And has also said he will address some of the obstacles impending effective operations of the FIRS. Is going to innovate and build operations on foolproof technology, block leakages, which we need to strengthen internal processes and control mechanisms. These are some of the points that Dr. Zach Adedeji, the new FRS boss, said it's going to do to boost our revenue and also block leakages. What do you make of this, sir?
Well, the gentleman has rolled out his initial action plan. I guess it's part of his initial situational awareness analysis. I reckon this may be expanded further down the line when he does what I call, takes a peek in what I call the book of reality beyond the handover notes he's going to collect or receive from the outgoing or the outgone, FIRS boss. Be that as it may, the action plans look right and correct steps to take.
Is there anything missing in that action plan which you would like to add?
Well, I wouldn't say there's anything missing. Like I said, I am a proponent of people settling in before they actually come out with action plan. Because to be honest, Gbenga, it's too early to tell the real situation within the FRS at the moment.
Yes.
So maybe in a couple of days we can be able to see what precipitates and may include. But to me, permit me to say the issue of revenue, to my mind, debt and all that is beyond FIRS, with all due respect. And for my mind, we need to expand this conversation beyond tax, because when we focus on this tax, it appears to me at the end of the day, the downtrodden, the citizens of this country will be made to pay more in terms of bringing it to the table.
Baba Yusuf, where do you think we should also move this spotlight to? The golden goose that lays the golden egg. Are you looking towards the NNPC and crude oil receipts?
I'm looking at the entire governance framework. I'll take you through some notes I took, Gbenga, permit me. Apart from increasing tax collection and revenue inflow, what I'm saying is that will not cut it for us. What is important is the entire fiscal discipline framework must change going forward. We need to see quintessential leadership from the top. I hear loud and clear conversations about cost cutting. I would rather paraphrase it, called containment of governance. I want us to see prudence, at the top, and going down the rudder and cascading the entire governance framework. And based on that, to also address blockage of leakages. Dr. Adedeji talked about blockage of leakages within the tax net, but it's beyond that. With the entire governance framework, we need to deal with blockages and also stoppage of wastages. The more you get money, and you throw it into the basket, you cannot retain anything. So if we don't also look at these cost containment measures, because part of the biggest culprit is government spending and government behavior with regards to governance, I want to see sincere, objective, result-oriented, underlying and transparent war against corruption. Because if we don't deal with these fundamental issues and the pillars of governance, then all the efforts of Dr. Adedeji and his likes may amount to naught. We also want to see creativity from other revenue-generating entities with regards to reining in more revenue for the country. Zero tolerance for non-performance by regulatory agencies who are also in cahoots, with all the culprits that are allowing our revenues or our incomes to leak away. Zero tolerance to non-performance across all MDAs. Total stoppage of budget padding. Gbenga, sometimes we saw over the news, over time, sometimes 100% of what will cost to execute a project is what they add as budget padding. To say that, and the entire procurement malpractice within the framework of government. Now, coming back to private sector also, for government to ensure that those that play with the private sector to circumvent the system, I'm talking about big business, who do not also pay taxes and rein in our revenues. We must block the leakages. We must have fiscal discipline. We must fight corruption to its standstill, demonstrably so. And I said result-oriented because we should move from the days of continuous prosecution without outcomes. The regulatory agencies, the law enforcement agencies like the EFCC and IFCC should be more result-oriented to watertight cases that will give us results going forward.
It shouldn't just be lip service to
Absolutely.
it. We need to see actions.
Absolutely.
Now, by Yusuf, I would like to pick up from where you, one of the points you mentioned, those who do not pay taxes, the tax net. If you look at Nigeria, we're one of the lowest when it comes to tax to GDP ratio. A lot of people are just freeloaders in this economy. The outgoing FIRS boss, Mohammed Nami, said that only 41 million, poultry 41 million out of 200 million Nigerian citizens pay tax. Now, driven by technology and innovation, Dr. Adedeji has said that his administration aims to modernize tax administration. Could you elaborate on the benefits of this approach and how it can enhance revenue collection and compliance? There's also the cultural part that people feel, if I don't see dividends of democracy, in quotes, if I'm still riding on pothole-ridden roads and there are no street lights and, I'm not seeing any tangible development, why should I pay my taxes? How do you respond to that, Baba Yusuf?
Fantastic question, Gbenga. First of all, I'll answer the first before the second before the first. Very important. The perception, which is part of the reality of us as Nigerians, citizens of Nigeria, is that what is happening to the monies that are collected? How are they impacting on the life and livelihoods of Nigerians? We talk about irresponsible governance from the point of view of wastages and leakages. So I think part of what will help this government is the confidence and trust building measure to see demonstrable quintessential leadership, like I said, containing cost of governance, first of all, while you continue to, because I'm waiting to see the outcome of the presidential tax reform panel. Fantastic team, I must say, headed by a very erudite tax master. But then beyond that, we want to see in action in it a situation whereby, like you rightly said, if 40% of Nigerians are currently taxed, quadrat of the population, but then you stay and look at the cup half empty and say, could it be it is because there is no robust mechanism to impact on citizens for the moral obligation and right on government to say they want to collect tax from these people? Now, IMF has told us that about 80% of Nigerians operate in the informal sector, which drives the economy. And I also agree with the school of thought that largely the informal sector is untaxed. But then I hope it's going to be a double-edged sword in the sense that it's not just going to tax people, but to provide mechanism to encourage people to still remain in business and remain sustainable. The removal of oil subsidy.
Not tax them out of business.
No, not just tax people out, and also to look at the current economic realities. I believe, without prejudice to outcome of the recommendations by the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms, and this is an advice, to also consider the shock absorbers on the informal sector before you start taxing them. And I go back to what I said earlier, Gbenga, the big businesses. How are we sure they pay the tax as at how and how much and when they should pay these taxes? We need to look at that. We need to x-ray that to ensure that the big businesses are not, given special cover while the citizens will be facing the vagaries of paying taxes. It should be all-encompassing. I believe everybody should pay tax, but in line with the principles of fairness, equity, and justice. The citizens of this country need to be, encouraged to pay tax, and one of them is to see leadership at the top doing the right thing, and also to see dividends of democracy on the ground, everywhere, across strata, across sectors.
Now, still on this theme, Baba Yusuf, of encouraging people, Nigerians, to pay their taxes, Encouraging voluntary tax compliance is a key objective of the new FRS boss, Dr. Adedeji. Can you suggest strategies to motivate Nigerians? You are a private business owner to willingly fulfill their tax obligations, particularly in light of tax evasion concerns beyond the the need to be patriotic. What other things are there to convince the ordinary Nigerian that, look, I'm doing my own responsibility? I remember the head of the Presidential Tax Reform Committee, former PricewaterhouseCoopers member, employee. I hosted a summit of states internally revenue services bosses in Abuja at the Shehu Musa Yar'Adua Center, and he did say something quite instructive that stuck with me. He said, he was in Norway, and the tax the tax ratio is quite high, and somebody gave a presentation and said, when I was young, we had 5 boys. I lost both parents. We became an orphan. My family, my brothers were orphans at the age of 10, but we didn't feel any difference. It almost felt like our parents were alive because the state took care of us to the best, to their finest ability, and we didn't feel any sort of we didn't feel like we were missing parents, because fellow Norwegians, pay their taxes and they could see the result of it. So how do we address our tax evasion concerns, and what can the government do to encourage people to voluntarily pay their taxes?
First of all, let me say that I like, some of the points that Dr. Adedeji rolled out, part of his action points, that he will ensure that people are encouraged to pay their taxes willingly and to run a transparent platform. Very critical. But I'll talk about 3 things. First of all, let us go back to dividends of democracy. People need to see that government is actually using those resources to add value to quality of life, to add value to governance, and for progress and development of Nigeria. What you call communication strategy for this Dr. Adedeji and for government to show clarity and to be concise on what they are doing with revenues collected will engender confidence and trust on the people. Deploying technology also will capture and block leakages, but I hope there will be integration for all the agencies of government that will be able to harmonize, and have a platform that will be able to ensure that we capture the people that are supposed to pay taxes. And transparency, again, is very critical. Impacting on the people is very critical. Constructive engagement with these people, because if the big businesses are paying and people know they are paying and government is delivering dividends of democracy, it's easier to make the medium, small, medium, and even nano businesses to pay taxes. And let us hear people that are going for offices and all that actually paying taxes, not just going to pay tax when you want to run for office. So leadership from the top is what will engender confidence and trust, and we hope and pray that in this government, this will happen.
And on that note, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, Baba Yusuf, Policy Strategist and Group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company. Always a pleasure talking to you. We do appreciate your insights and your candor on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Gbenga. Anytime, any day. It's my pleasure.